motions, then anything to pass would be 3 ayes is what would pass something.
Okay.
And then, if anyone wants to abstain, then that kind of takes away from the majority as well. So, and you guys don't have to abstain from minutes on the consent calendar as well. So, you can if you want, but you should abstain.
Okay, let's get started. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Design Review and Historic Preservation Commission. It is 6 o'clock now on March 14th. For the Zoom, here's the countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. May I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Commissioner Hairsty?
Here.
Commissioner Jerome?
Yeah.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here.
And Chair Moore.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any comments from the public?
There are no hands raised on Zoom, and it does not appear that anyone wants to come up in person.
Thank you. And let's see, we'll review and accept the agenda. Is there a desire to change the order of or change the agenda in general? If not, we'll have a motion to approve, please. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted.
I second.
Thank you. Do we have any late correspondence?
Do you want to do a roll call?
Oh, let's do a roll call, please.
Commissioner Hairsty?
Here.
Commissioner Jerome?
Yeah.
Commissioner Thompson?
Here.
And Chair Moore.
Here, and we'll say aye as
Aye.
well for accepting the agenda.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Now we'll go to the consent calendar. So looking at the consent calendar, we have items 3.1, minutes from regular Design Review and Historic Preservation Commission meeting, and the special Design Review and Historic Preservation Commission meeting on January 17th, 2023. Let's see here. Do we have any other items on that? On the
consent calendar?
on the consent calendar?
No, it appears it's just the minutes from those meetings.
Oh, there's my other page. Thank you. All right, now we'll go to the public hearing section.
Oh, do we want to make a motion to accept the consent calendar?
Sure, let's do that.
Okay.
Would someone like to make a motion to accept the consent calendar, please?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent calendar.
I second.
Thank you.
And roll call vote? Okay. Commissioner Hairsty?
Aye.
Commissioner Jerome? Commissioner Thompson?
Aye.
And Chair Moore.
Hi.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Now we'll head to the public hearing. The first item is 4.1, discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve the landscape plan of Ron Wellender at 991 Broadway, including action to approve a categorical exemption pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act, Section 15304. May we have a staff report, please?
Absolutely. I'll try to make this one nice and quick. And as a little bit of a backstory, this is hopefully going to be one of the last landscape plans that comes before the Design Review and Historic Preservation Commission. We have a series of code amendments going through, and these types of projects in the future would be approved by staff. So the project at 991 Broadway was approved by the Planning Commission in the fall. This is the historic or former little school on Broadway. So it's a 12,000 square foot site with a 2,600 square foot building and a parking lot. This is right across from the Sonoma Valley High School. The use permit that was approved by the Planning Commission is for a coffee shop and a chiropractic office. One of the conditions of approval for the use permit was for the landscape plan to be prepared and reviewed and approved. And so that's what is before the commission this evening. And unfortunately, I can't read the plans that well at this scale, but it was prepared by our local landscape architect and council member Ron Wellander. We have the WELO calculations and the irrigation plan as well. Here's some photos of the project site for those of you who might not be familiar with it. It's mostly just some perimeter plantings. And the recommended action is to approve the landscape plan subject to conditions of approval. Any questions for staff?
Seeing no questions for staff, I'd like to ask, is the applicant available?
They're not here this evening.
Okie doke. Well, so we move on through questions. And do we have any other public comments? None there? None on
And
Zoom?
None on Zoom.
Thank you. No written comments. Thank you. We'll close the meeting to the public and bring it back to the commission for discussion. So let's start with Commissioner Jerome.
I find it very straightforward, no specific concern.
Thank you. Commissioner Harashti?
I agree with Commissioner Amar. I drove by the property. Looks like it could use a little help, and I think it's a great idea.
Commissioner Thompson?
I have no problem with what's presented. It looks to be an improvement overall, so all good.
Thank you. I agree with my fellow commissioners. It's in need of some little TLC after all the preschoolers have been through there so many years. So I'm excited for that improvement, and everything looks appropriate. So I have no issue with that. So would a commissioner like to make a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve as noted by the staff with the condition of approval.
I second the motion.
May we have a roll call vote, please?
Yeah. Commissioner Hairsty,
Aye.
Commissioner Jerome,
Aye.
Commissioner Thompson,
Aye.
and Chair Amar.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Now we'll move on to item 4.2, discussion, consideration, and possible action to approve the design review application of Daniel Crowley for an exterior modifications to a commercial building, the Cheese Factory, located at 2 West Napa Street, including action to approve categorical exemption pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act, Guidelines, Section 15301. May we have a staff report, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Cheese Factory is located right at the north side of the Sonoma Plaza. I think everybody's probably familiar with the property. It's situated on 2 parcels with a combined area of 20,335 square feet. There's currently a 2-story, 11,397 square foot historic building that was completed in 1945 and was used for the cheese factory at that time. To the north is the Barracks parking lot, Casa Grande, which is owned by State Parks. And to the south is the Sonoma Plaza. To the east is the Sonoma State Historic Park, which is a state park. And to the west we have restaurants and the commercial zoning district. So the cheese factory itself is eligible for listing in the California Register of Historical Resources under Criterion 1 for events for its role in the establishment of the cheese industry in Sonoma. In addition, it's also located within the Sonoma Plaza National Historic Landmark and National Register of Historic Places. It is not a contributor. So in those districts, we have a defined area, and some buildings are contributors to the district and some are just within it. So it's not a contributor, but it is within it. So an issue of concern for the overall design. Additionally, it's located in the City of Sonoma's Historic Overlay District and is considered a historic resource under the California Environmental Quality Act. The location is very sensitive as it's adjacent to the State Historic Park and directly adjacent to the servants' quarters. And we've been coordinating closely with Page and Turnbull, who is one of the city's, the applicant engaged Page and Turnbull, and so the city's been working with them very closely on the project. and we worked with them to develop conditions of approval to require the preparation of a historic preservation plan and a historic resource protection and training program. And those conditions of approval have been sent over to State Parks, and they've reviewed them. I believe somebody's going to be on the call this evening to make some additional comments. Here are some photographs. This is the servants' quarters and shows the little alley that goes between the cheese factory and the servants' quarters. Here's the existing site plan. So the Sonoma Plaza is to the left and the Casa Grande parking lot's to the right. And here are the existing elevations. We have on the top left is the north side from the Casa Grande parking lot. Over to the right is the east elevation looking from the historic park. Then the front looking at the cheese factory from the Sonoma Plaza. And then the west elevation, which is in that alley. So the applicable development standards for the project, this is located in our downtown district. And just to give commissioners who are coming up to speed a little bit of information, Sonoma does our planning a little bit unique compared to other jurisdictions. So we have 11 planning areas, and each project one of the first things we do is we try to look at what planning area it is, and so there's different standards depending on which planning area. So the downtown has its own unique characteristics and standards. The Sonoma Highway Corridor has its own. We have our Central West, Northeast, and so when you see that, we see planning area, that's what we're talking about. So the zoning is commercial, and in our commercial zoning district, there are no required setbacks for front, side, or rear, so the building could be built right up to the property line. The current proposal is for a design review application for exterior modifications to the existing building. This includes modifications to the west side alley, a new accessible path of travel and accessible entry, modifications to the overall building exterior, and new exterior materials and finishes. So the west side alley is what we're looking at right now. This is between Mary's Pizza and the Cheese Factory. The current entrance is not accessible for Americans with Disabilities Act, so that's one of the major improvements as part of this project. So there will be a new accessible path of travel utilizing the existing west side doorway. And I'll let the applicant and the architect explain a little bit more about that, not my area of expertise. And there's going to be a new concrete curb and drainage, and a new pedestrian walkway will have a new metal gate and covered trash enclosure as well. So the exterior of the building is going to be improved as well with new lighting, new relocated and replacement metal gate. There's, as I mentioned, the waste enclosure and a lot of new equipment that's going to be roof mounted and screened as well. Here is the proposed site plan. It's a little tricky at the scale to see, but you can see the accessible path of travel on the the west side of the building. And the applicant today requested a slight modification to the materials for the walk, so I'll let them elaborate on that as well. So here are the existing and proposed elevations. So the top line, you have the existing on the left and the proposed on the right. So overall, I think you can see that the elevations are really not changing substantially. It's really just new equipment on the roof and some of the screening. Up on the top, we have the front facade. And then the west elevation, I believe. So the proposed exterior materials and finishes include new side lights, barn lights, new painting, the mechanical screens, and paint. And here we have the colors and the trash enclosure. So unfortunately, the project is not quite ready to be considered for approval. We've received some late comments from State Parks, and they would like to have some additional correspondence and communication about the preservation plan for the servants' quarters. And hopefully during public comments, are they on Zoom? Okay, Michelle's on Zoom, so I'll take a minute to introduce Michelle Squire from State Parks and let her have a moment. But the recommended action from staff is to request a continuance to a date off calendar. And the reason for it being off calendar is we're not sure what's going to be involved in identifying the concerns. And our April meeting is going to be canceled due to staff conflicts. And so we'll likely need a special meeting. And this way we can schedule it when it's convenient for everyone. So that concludes my presentations. I'm available for questions.
Thank you. Do we have questions for staff? I do have a couple of questions. As far as this looks like it's like the beginning of what's going to be some major improvements coming down a pipeline. Is that correct? Just like phase one?
I'm not aware of any other, that might be a better question for the applicant. I'm not aware of any other recommended changes at this time. I think they have some interior renovations as well that does not require design review. So as far as coming before the commission, this is the only scope of work that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. And I have one more question. Just out of curiosity, has there been a discussion on your end with the applicant about the decals in the window that are currently are a new addition?
No, we haven't had any conversations with that. They are aware that any of the signage needs design review approval, and that's part of the application was that that would be a deferred submittal.
Okay, thank you. Alrighty, is the applicant available?
Good evening. I'm Michael Ross, principal at Ross Drewlis Quisenberry Architecture. Is this working? Okay. I'd like to connect my computer if possible. HDMI, that works. What do you think? Is it going to work? There it is. Well, I guess my fondest memories of the Sonoma Cheese Factory is when I first arrived on the scene in 1975 and there was free cheese sampling. And I've had really a wonderful relationship with the Sonoma Cheese Factory over the years. And in 2014, I started working with Maria Viviani and the Viviani Trust to develop a new approach to the Sonoma Cheese Factory, and we were granted 2 use permits for improvements to the facility, and those, through subsequent ownership and things that happened, those were left in the wayside, but I'm really happy now that some additional improvements are going to happen that could support the full operation of the Sonoma Cheese Factory in the future. And so that's why we're here today, to begin this process, to really create the infrastructure necessary for the Sonoma Cheese Factory to be fully operational again and a key member of our plaza community. What we're presenting today really is a package of deferred maintenance, repair, and accessibility and barrier removal upgrades that have been necessary for quite a long time. And what you see on the screen right now is the site plan from the air, the existing one. And can you see my cursor moving? That's a good thing. Okay, so the primary areas that are going to be improved, the ones that are most notable, I would say, are the pedestrian walkway between Mary's Pizza and the cheese factory. And it's not really a pedestrian walkway right now, it's a utility yard. And it's a hard-working space. Debris boxes are back in there. It's a staging area, some deliveries and things like that. But one of the key assets of that alley, which I'm now going to call a pedestrian walkway, because that's our intent, is there's a door that is approximately right where my cursor is. And that door enters at grade, at sidewalk grade, into the store. Whereas where you enter into the store directly off of Spain Street right now, there's these sort of fans of concrete right in front of the doors, and then you walk up, and those are not compliant with ADA. They are barriers to access. And so one of the primary ambitions for this project is to make the front of the store accessible. And the best way of doing that is by using this currently underutilized pedestrian walkway, removing all the concrete, putting in new paving, putting in a brick paving pattern that I will describe to you, and as well as drainage, a new grease interceptor, and things that are buried underneath that walkway, and creating a much more pleasant means of entering the store if you need accessible entry, if you're a wheelchair user, for example. In so doing, we are going to move that gate that currently hides the garbage cans and things like that and upgrade it, move it towards the back, and then this area that's back in here that's white, right there, that's going to become the utility yard. That's where the debris boxes are going to be and things like that. And so it's going to be a much more pleasing view from the plaza up to this new entry. And where the application says we're going to put a new door, a side light, and things like that, it's basically within the existing opening of that doorway that exists there now. And we worked very closely with Page and Turnbull to do a historic resource evaluation, or an HRE, and to develop a memorandum of understanding of the proposed design, which is included in your packet, which indicates that none of the character-defining features of the historic building are going to be tampered with, and that it's consistent with the Department of the Interior's guidelines for the rehabilitation and renovation of historic buildings. So the rest of the scope of work that is, in a way, slightly difficult to understand, but it's a removal of the aging mechanical equipment on the roof, re-roofing, replacement with new high-energy efficiency equipment and gear, HVAC equipment and things like that, and a new accessible path of travel for staff entry at the rear. And then the things that I know that many people are interested in is the signage, which is not part of this package, and I'll speak to those decals, which were a complete surprise. And so the signage is under a separate design review application. It will be a comprehensive signage program for the entire facility, and that will be coming before you. And to the point of the historic buildings in the state park, we couldn't agree more that we have to be very sensitive about our neighboring historic buildings, and we look forward working with state parks to make sure that those buildings are protected during construction. And what would construction be underneath this permit, should it be granted? Well, basically, we're going to have to remove some heavy equipment from the roof, which would probably be done through a crane. In fact, I know it'll be done through a crane. The crane would have to be carefully located, ideally in Casa Grande parking lot with the approval of the state to do that, or from Spain Street. And we would be focusing on low vibration construction techniques and protecting those buildings from any workers. And we agree that we will participate in a worker education program about working on historic buildings. And so we think that's an excellent condition of approval. So with your permission, I would like to present to you a slight material change, which is the manufacture of the brick paving. And Matthew, can I hand these out? What you see being given to you right now is precast brick. And it's a material that we're using successfully in urban paving right now in downtown Palo Alto. We're doing a very large project, and the urban plazas that we are installing around this building in Palo Alto are this Hanover precast product, which is beautiful fine grain, but we're going to be using it in brick size as compared to big panels of it. And it's going to be, the colors are limestone gray in the field and with charcoal banding. And why did we choose that color? Well, your natural inclination with brick shapes typically is to go with warm colors, reds and things like that. But I feel like the Sonoma Cheese Factory with its terracotta tile, if we were going too warm and warm or too much orange and orange, that it would probably be too much. And so we're proposing to go with a neutral palette, something more in keeping with the color of the sidewalks that's around the plaza. So in summary, that is what is being proposed today. It's sort of a package of deferred maintenance, new rooftop equipment and screens, and the paving up the pedestrian walkway. Thank you for this opportunity to make this presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions should you have them.
Thank you very much. Does the commission have any questions for the applicant? Yes.
I do have a couple of questions. I understand, first of all, I really think that you're making a good improvement to that building visually and functionally, and that's a very good step in the right direction. The first question I have is about your path of travel through that alley, and understanding that at the end of the alley you would have the enclosure for trash or something. And I also understand that you indicated your signage package will be submitted under separate application. But I'm concerned that when the people exit through that door in emergency situation, what prevents them to go right rather than going left to the sidewalk?
Great question. So if you go right instead of left to the sidewalk, that's where the new gate will be. And so a new steel gate with pickets and painted the bronze color will be to the right, so they won't be able to go into the service yard. They'll have to go towards the plaza.
My concern is they're getting into the dead-end situation at then, and I'm thinking about emergency situation when everybody's in a panic mood.
Well, and I think you raise a very important point. The thing also to remember is that there are multiple other doorways out to the plaza through the front of the store as well through the side of the store. So there'll be 4 total fire exits for the building. But any building permit that is granted, of course, is going to have to get fire marshal review and approval. And that would be something that would be a gatekeeper, really, for any building permit that would be granted. But your points, the importance of it's well taken.
Thank you. Next question I have is a part of your project is removing and replacing heavy equipment on the roof. Has a structural evaluation has been made to support installation of the new equipment on the roof?
Yes. We're working with ZFA Structural Engineers, a widely known structural engineering company in Santa Rosa that has 9 offices. We're working with them throughout the state of California. They've done a complete analysis of the roof and the size and weight of the gear.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any questions? All right, let's turn it to the public. Do we have public comments?
one person is walking to the podium now.
Good evening. Please state your name.
Hi, I'm David Eicher, and I too have been following the cheese factory, the Sonoma Cheese Factory, and what's been going on there since 2014, and spoken many times in front of the Planning Commission and the City Council, and have done a very thorough review of the 2004 use permit, which is allowing them to go forward. And I am glad to see that they are actually going to be, doing some of the renovations and upgrading things, and putting some visual barriers on the equipment up above. But the two main concerns that I have, and always have been since 2014, has been the impact to the historic servants' quarters. And it sounds like they're doing a lot in terms of during construction, but I'm also concerned about during the use. And on that area, they're going to be replacing gas heaters. I want to make sure that the California State Parks has thoroughly reviewed that, understanding what is being, it says in-kind replacement, so hopefully not being moved any closer, and those which are closest to the servants' quarters have been, they're not getting intense increase in intensity or any more fire hazards, because that is just old wooden structure, so it's going to go up and be gone. So that's a major concern of mine. And I'm glad that the state parks is going to be looking further at this, so please do a continuance so you can get that input and see if there's anything else that's needed there. The other concern that I have is the timely completion of the project. And I think for this project, I'm going to be recommending to the City Council and Planning Commission that other projects have a construction management plan and a construction completion schedule. We have seen, I live up in Boyce Hot Springs, and up there we've got the landing projects, and I've driven up the valley and you can see the Moon Mountain projects with a cyclone fence. And now you got the Cocoa Planet with a cyclone fence. I don't want to see construction going on in this for anything longer than it has to be. And so, hopefully you've seen what I've sent to you, that the City of Piedmont has put such a requirement on some other on his Matson property in Piedmont for a construction management plan and construction completion schedule. Because this is, again, it's on the historic plaza. It's right there adjacent and abuts that servants' quarters is on the property line there. And so it impacts the historic California State Parks there. So that's another major concern. And I think the other thing I did ask the question, haven't gotten a response from staff, is I know that there was an issue with one little slice of the property being, in terms of the map didn't agree with the description of the property, and so I know K.S. Matson is trying to get that resolved, and I think that needs to be resolved before we can move forward, because it's not clear they actually own the property that they're working on, or the state does. From what I read, it sounds like it's K.S. Matson's, but I think that just needs to be resolved before moving forward. Let's see, is there anything else in my comments? So I do think in terms of the historic report, there does need to be either a peer-reviewed or some other independent review for the historic nature, because this wasn't paid for by the applicant. They chose the company, which I believe is well respected, but still I had some questions which I hope you have read in the email. And so I think that needs to be looked at. And I think you do need the fire marshal or an independent, someone who is an expert in terms of the fire hazards, because I think that's very important to look at that. Because another thing that is there, which I am pretty certain the state parks has never signed off on, is the barbecue, and I do see it in the plans, the barbecue on the east side of that. And I further did a thorough review of the 2004 use permit. There's no mention of the barbecue. There was a barbecue there at one time, and then my understanding, my belief, my recollection, although I could not get a copy of the Planning Commission video, they weren't doing the videotape at that time, that that barbecue, I think the fire department once said that it shouldn't be there and it was removed because of that, but that's not being recorded in the minutes. So that's just my recollection of it. So I would like to get another review of that by the fire department or the fire marshal to say, yes, that's okay, it's not a fire hazard. So I think I've covered pretty much everything, and I hope you read my emails, and I did get help on that with someone else who is very up on CEQA and has helped in the past on the cheese factory in the past iterations of the projects that have been going on there. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments?
Yes, we have Michelle Squire with the California State Parks on Zoom, who would like to speak.
Hello.
All right, go ahead, Michelle.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation, and State Parks just learned of the project last week and just received the documents on Friday. We have had contact with the project representative, and we just need more time to review everything. So appreciate the time to be able to go ahead and do that and review the reports and take a look at any potential issues for the state park.
Thanks, Michelle.
And there are no other hands raised on Zoom right now.
Great. Any other written comments?
There was no late correspondence received.
Okay, I'll close the meeting to the public and bring it back to the commission for discussion. How about Commissioner Harashti?
Well, I'm glad to see that there's going to be some progress made on the building, and I agree with Mr. Icar that there should be a beginning and finishing time frame. We don't want to see a cyclone fence wrapped around the cheese factory. I think that all of that's presented is really important for a beginning phase of what's going to happen there. And I look forward to seeing the signage at one of our meetings in the future. So that's what I'd like to say.
Thank you. Commissioner Thompson?
I think too, it's probably required, but also good that they are putting in an accessible path and having concerns about that. My concerns are on the opposite side and the roof work and what's going to be done in terms of a worker education program. I just think it needs more input from state parks and from some professionals, historical preservationists, whatnot, that can be really careful, because I went to the property today and that servants' quarters is like, it's right there. So that's concerning to me because there are several hazards that construction could present, not just fire hazards, but things falling and breaking and that kind of thing. So While I think the accessibility issue is great, I do have concerns about other aspects of the project, particularly on the other side.
Thank you. Commissioner Dromey?
Yes, as I indicated, I'm really glad that some steps are taken to improve that building, specifically for accessibility. Being a physically challenged person myself, I have very strong interest in making sure that all aspects of this accessibility are studied carefully. And including when you're suggesting the brick pavers for that alley, I find that in tune with, as you indicated, the color of sidewalk, and that's a very pleasant application there. However, I think a special attention needs to be made to the transition between the two materials, because if I were using that with my cane and there was a half an inch discrepancy between the elevations, I wouldn't really consider that accessible. And as I said, I also understand that your signage package is separate, but in line with the comment I made earlier, I like to see a sign at least at the door directing people to the street and sidewalk rather than letting them panic to the other side. And with all of those considered, I think this gas-driven equipment on the roof raises concern about the fire hazard and everything else. With today's technology, probably those concerns are responded by the unit itself, but I still like to see that that's considered as part of your next step evaluation, making sure that the public concerns in that regard are put in rest. And the project, as I see, based on what I hear and what I see, is not ready for really approval by this commission at this time, because the comment from the state park is not known yet. And also there's a construction plan for protecting those historical aspects is not based on what I saw part of this submission. These are my concerns.
Thank you. Yes, I share the viewpoint of my fellow commissioners on many of these subjects. Just to kind of focus on the task at hand right now, I'm in favor of the continuance, of course, for the state parks to really become more involved now that their attention is brought to this, and I think that's a great positive resource hopefully they can provide, and guidance and regulation. And I see it as our commission's job. It's like the priority here is, as everyone is expressing, is of course the cheese factory itself. We want to preserve it and we all remember it, but the true thing to preserve is the servants' quarters next door. So with the utmost care provided for the construction involved, I appreciate your sensitivity to these construction measures, also your openness to working with historical resources in your HRA with Page and Turnbull. That's greatly appreciated. So it sounds like we can all sort of be on the same page with getting these other things dialed in, and the I's dotted and T's crossed, and hopefully quickly. So yeah, my concerns are kind of it's the same as everyone else's here, so we don't have to really go into that too much. I would suggest getting clarity on that barbecue, unless the plans are just to not use it anymore. That's because that's.
Yeah, through the chair, so the plans for the barbecue have been reviewed by the fire department, and they do require building permits, so they would be required to comply with fire code through that process as well.
Okay, so I guess maybe this is a question for the applicant as well. Will that barbecue not be in use until these things are remedied?
I believe that the barbecue is basically grandfathered in for its current use, and we're proposing to retain it and meet any fire code requirements to support that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, as far as the uses go, the allowable uses at the cheese factory have been established in a resolution that went through City Council in 2019. That was included in your agenda packet. So that's the guiding document for what is allowed at that property.
Thank you. Okay, so yes, I will very much look forward to the signage program and also to hear what we come back with as far as what the state parks will say. So, would a commissioner like to make a motion to request a continuance?
I make a motion to continue reviewing this project based on the staff comment and the public concerns and at the future time.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Could I have the roll call vote?
Yes, Commissioner Hairsty,
Aye.
Commissioner Jerome, Commissioner Thompson,
Aye.
and Chair Barr.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate your presentation. Would you like your paper back for any reason? Michael?
Pardon?
Would you like any of these papers back for anybody else?
Oh, you don't want them for a souvenir?
Well, they are pretty beautiful.
Thank you.
For bringing that.
You got it. Appreciate it.
Good suggestion. That was one that
We'll recycle it.
Thank you.
Do you have a copy? Yes, you can.
All right.
David, see you soon, I'm sure. Bye-bye.
All right. Let's have any items for discussion.
The only update I have is that the design review streamlining ordinance that we presented, was that last month? Is moving forward. No, we had an ordinance that has been working its way through trying to streamline the design review process. It goes back a year or so where the council was looking at options for, consolidating, maybe taking the design review away from hearings, and what's being recommended is a minor change so that landscape plans are approved by staff, and then the concurrent review of projects. So if a project requires design review and a use permit, that would just go straight to the Planning Commission. So that's going to be going back to the Planning Commission on Thursday night, and so hopefully moving forward after that to City Council.
Great.
Yes, and
No
no
meeting in
meeting,
April.
no meeting on April 11th. So we'll likely have to schedule a special meeting depending on the timeline for the cheese factory.
All right. I have on my agenda 5.1, election of vice chair. So I'd like to call for nominations for vice chair. Can we do that tonight?
Can I make a suggestion? I suggest postponing to that when everybody's here. Is that okay?
Works for me.
There you go. I thought we did this one.
Did we do it already?
Christopher nominated me and I was like, it just started, it's like.
Yes, yeah, we did do that
I
recently.
don't remember, I think he chose, he is the vice chair. Christopher?
He was.
He was.
Johnson, yeah.
So he and Michaela have gone on to greener pastures, I'm sure. And so now we'll need to replace Christopher as the vice chair, and we'll do that at our next meeting.
Okay.
And then we have one new commissioner, is that right? Another new person, Kara,
Kara.
and she's so.
Okay, I have a question, because of the Brown Act and all, she's asked me to meet her,
Can you use your microphone?
is that okay?
Oh, she has reached out to me
to meet with her, to just discuss what the commission is all about. I mean, I'm so new that, you know, I
We
don't,
can talk offline.
okay, great.
She reached out to me too.
Oh, did she? Let's go with together.
No, that you can't do.
Oh, okay. All right then, I took that training, I should know.
We can't have a side meeting.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, and that means Commissioner Cormany is the alternate I saw? Okay. Well then. Do we have any issues and updates that we didn't cover yet? Okay, good. Do we have any more comments from us as the commission? No? Okay, well. Well, welcome, Tony. Thank you. I'm glad to have you here. You seem like a natural already. It's good.
I don't know, Sandra? No, Patricia.
Please remember to use your guys' microphones when you guys are speaking.
Sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, for the record.
Yeah. Got it, sorry.
Okay. All right, and I think we can adjourn this meeting now. It is 6:50.